It is the Business of Social podcast powered by SCN Digital. I'm your host, David Brickley. Every single episode, we talk to the experts to get their advice and their learnings and their knowledge on the ever-changing social and digital landscape. This is episode number 40, 40. A lot of 40s that we need to go over here, Will. We got the top five, right? Madison Bumgarner of the Giants, one of the best pitchers in the game. Pat Tillman, of course, RIP, amazing linebacker for the Arizona Cardinals. Gale Sayers, Sean Kemp, and Rick Sutcliffe. Good mix of talent. You know what I have to do? It's the Pat Tillman podcast. I mean, you're putting me in a situation where my dad spent 23 years in the military. Obviously, he's someone that is very well respected and amazing human being if you know his story and fought for our country. So this is the Pat Tillman episode. We're starting things off on a really high note. I love the energy here. We are talking to James Royer. He's the director of digital marketing at Merrell. Merrell, they believe in the trail. They do a lot of outdoor equipment, boots, shoes, everything like that. And he moved actually he worked at the Tampa Bay Lightning in the NHL. He went to the Kansas City Chiefs, and then now he's on the brand side. So very interesting to talk to him. He's a fan of the podcast. He sent me over a bunch of bullet points that could help me with my preparation of what he's done and where he's gone. David Furker, one of our producers here as well, is calling this already. He called it before the show. This is going to be the best podcast in business of social history. It's a lot of pressure for James to have to live up to, but I'm confident. I know James well. We worked together while he was at the Kansas City Chiefs and been staying in touch, and super pumped for his move here at Merrell and excited to learn more. I think you guys are really going to enjoy this one. James Royer, the Director of Digital Marketing at Merrell. All right, he is the Director of Digital Marketing at Merrell. James Royer joins us on the Business Social. James, thanks so much for the time, man.
It's a pleasure being here. Good talking to you again.
Yeah, you as well. I always kick things off at the top with a random question. And on Twitter, you're known for highlighting terrible sales emails.
I am.
So I'd love to hear off the top of your head the best and the worst cold sales email you've ever gotten.
Wow, that's put me on a spot right away.
What comes to mind?
I think the funniest one was a guy knew I was going to do it, and he went through the process of actually sending me. He sent me the complete collection of the Far Side comic books from way back.
Interesting.
And he knew I was going to make fun of it, and he waited for it. And he said, then he played it up, and he played it up perfectly. So I have to give him a lot of props for kind of going the extra mile, kind of knowing what was going to happen there, and he played along with it really well, and it was a really good sport with it. So. So
he knew that you were potentially going to call him out, and he still went forward knowing part of the strategy. Got it. Calculated effort.
Yeah, it was very calculated. And I think in the sales world, there's just a lot of like conquesting out there. And hey, I want to get this. I want to get this big name. I want to get this big name. And you see a lot of that. But there's some really good ones that come across too. And people will ask me like, what are the good ones? And I'll save them. And I'll talk to those people. If they have a really good pitch and say, hey, it's worthwhile understanding. But yeah, there's some ones that's just, obviously you get the ones where, in fact, you had Ben Hunt on once in your show recently. Yeah. And Ben and I know each other pretty well. And there was one that was directed to Ben, and I took a screenshot and I put it up as is. And Ben responded right away saying, I think that was meant for me. So
that's so funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, especially, so you spent time at the Kansas City Chiefs as well prior to Merrell. And I think I can only imagine how many brands, agencies, software platforms, sales platforms want to work with NFL teams. I guess I'm just interested, from a sales perspective, like what breaks through? Because, even for me at an agency, I get bombarded with so many Dear Sir, Madams, or, hey, David, are you looking at a new HR provider or sales CMS platform. But have you seen it? Have you kind of seen some of the psychology or what kind of breaks through the noise in a more healthy way?
Well, it's funny, interesting you use the word psychology, because there is a playbook out there that says, hey, do this or use this wording, and you see that consistently across the board. So one of the things that almost is a turnoff is when you see that playbook almost copy word or verbatim over and over again, and say that's not applicable. I think the people that do the best job of it would say, hey, I know you're busy. Here's what we're about. And here's how we think we can benefit you without being pretentious about it, saying, hey, you guys are, you get the ones that sometimes say, well, I've done an audit in your website. I think you guys are missing the boat on this part. And
that's tough.
That's not really what we're looking for. We kind of already know what our limitations and what we're doing well. It's more about, hey, this is what we do, and this is what the service we provide. And sometimes it's even, here's how we've helped other companies. And that's simple, just laying it out like that and saying, here's who we are. And it's the same way that you'd make an introduction if you're at a cocktail party. Hey, this is who I am, and nice to meet you. And then then you start the conversation.
Yeah, you want to walk up to a person and say, hey, I did an audit on your face. You have some wrinkles around your eyes. I sell this cream that can help you with that. Like, that's a pretty tough way to open a conversation.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. That's great.
Yeah, you don't want to do that.
Yeah.
All right, anyways, back to you. So can you give the listeners a quick, just 60-second elevator pitch on what is it you do as Director of Digital Marketing at Merrell?
Yeah, oversee all of our digital marketing efforts. And that's in the paid media side. It's also in social media and utilizing our content strategy. So really it comes down to how are we distributing that content across all the different platforms to kind of utilize that in a way that helps build up our both our brand awareness and e-commerce. We have a phrase we use here that's called sales overnight, brand over time, and how do we balance the both of those. And I oversee the brand marketing side of things, so we're really interested in how we build the Merrell brand. We do have a separate e-commerce team that's it's part of our parent company. It's part of the parent company. It's called Wolverine Worldwide. They kind of oversee a lot of different areas with the different brands within that portfolio. And we have somebody dedicated to Merrell One as well. But I'm interfacing with them on a regular basis, say, hey, this is what we want to align our marketing efforts around. We got this big product launch coming in. This is the assets we're going to utilize. How do we want to coordinate that with you so that we are being very cognizant of the customer journey and really understanding where the customer is and who we're targeting for this product, and using that to elevate the brand as well. So, one of the interesting things about working for a company like this is that we do have very different KPIs and objectives. That e-commerce has some different objectives than what we have as a brand, and we have to kind of bring those to the table and work together to kind of collectively meet those objectives. So yeah, that's kind of what we do.
And from a Merrell standpoint, the brand itself, what is it? What's its mission? I know it focuses on hiking gear and things like that, and that kind of community. But what's your core demo? What do you guys kind of known best for?
Yeah, I mean, we are one of the premier hiking boots in the market. We are very active in the outdoor industry, and that's people who want to get outside and just enjoy the. We kind of say it this way: the profound power of the trail. And when people
believe in the trail is your
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. In fact, there was some customer insights that we found. I think it was actually published externally, but we've kind of adopted the phrase is that a lot of people are saying that hike is the new yoga. So how do you get people out there to really enjoy the trail, because there's all these benefits to it? And as a brand, we've been around since 1981. We make products across hiking, casual, trail running, outdoor life, even some work product, with work boots and steel toes and things like that. But we also are very big believers in that the trail belongs to everybody. And we want to be one of those brands that help bring people together. We obviously live in a very a climate, especially politically, that is very diversive and divisive, and we want to bring that inclusion to the trail and say,
what are you talking about? I have no idea what you're talking about. Yeah, no, definitely. So I'll jump around here. I want to jump into a little bit your time at the Chiefs, what you're doing at Merrell, but just as a social media guy like myself, I want to get your thoughts on Instagram hiding likes. As you probably saw, Brazil, Canada, there's some test countries where they're hiding likes on posts, and from the PR angle, their Instagram is saying it's more about user safety and making sure people don't put their self-worth and things like that into the number of likes they're getting. From your standpoint, what's your overall opinion on if Instagram went global and turned likes off altogether publicly? What is kind of your first take on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you really look at it from the individual, it's got to separate into an individual user versus a corporate user. And I think the interesting thing is that from an individual perspective, I think that resonates with me what they've said in terms of, hey, really, it's not about likes, but even get into the influencer market. You know, and you look at the followings, and this was true with the Chiefs, true that most people like a lot of those followers aren't real, or you know they're set up by certain accounts, and you know you look at those likes and what those likes really, what does it really mean? And I think there's even a study that was on Adweek this morning that talked about how advertisers are losing billions of dollars based upon this kind of this scale of what we perceive as really the audience, but it's not really the audience. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of helping. I like it from that perspective. I think from the brand perspective, it's what we're always trying to do, and you know this as a social media marketer, is what's that social proof? How do we show that, hey, this is something that's worth their time and energy beyond just capturing attention? Obviously the user sees something, hey, this has a lot of likes on it. What does that mean? But even in the this side of things, on the business side, you know, we were looking at a brand recently, and their following is much smaller, but some of their numbers were, you know, they get 100,000 of likes. I'm like, how are they doing that?
Yeah.
Is that a paid cycle? Is that and you really can't tell. Yeah. You really can't tell. So you are looking at it from that perspective. So it'll be interesting to see. You know, we can talk about influencers and how that plays into a marketing strategy. We take a little different approach with Merrell. We use ambassadors. We don't necessarily have influencers. We're not really looking at their follower signs. We're looking for people who are authentically living their lives in the outdoors, and people who are inspiring others to, like I said, go out on the trail and experience that power that's out there, and just enjoying nature. And you know, you don't have to be somebody who is going to be on the podium all the time in these, you know, races, but we do have those people as ambassadors who are on the podium. And from a performance brand, you need that, but it's also the people who are just running the trails on a regular basis. So when you look at that perspective too, like we don't buy in necessarily to that anyway from an influencer perspective. Like, hey, you get us so many likes. We're asking them to say, hey, live the life that you're living, and we'll use that content. We're happy when you guys post on our behalf and showcase, you know, you wearing our product, but we're not looking for you guys to directly sell for us.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't want to get too off topic, but my producer and the whole office knows I have hot takes on this. I mean, isn't followers a vanity metric as well? Would you on personalized feeds, would you hide followers? Isn't views a vanity metric on YouTube if you're a YouTube blogger? Should we hide? I guess I'm just concerned as a social media marketer, as all data technically can be tied to that exact type of, you know, health statement. And where does it start? Should it start? Like, that's, I guess, my question to you is, like, do you have thoughts on if it is that slippery slope?
Yeah, I guess throughout my career, I've never been one to look at, hey, we got this many likes on a post. That's just not telling the entire story.
Right.
I'm really trying to figure out, how is this post impacting what we're trying to do from a whether it be objective, or that's a KPI, or how is this contributing to our overall business? And I guess you can look at the likes as kind of like this measure of saying, how does this perform against other posts? Mm-hmm. But it's always been about reach to me anyway. So what's that reach look like? And especially as the algorithm started shifting and changing, where you're not getting the same kind of reach, that became much more valuable to me to say, okay, is this post resonating? And obviously, you know, engagements will drive that. I think that maybe.
And is your interaction rate, is your growth rate healthy? Those things you're looking at.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Is that interaction rate enough to say, okay, well, this post is doing well because of that? So, and I think that becomes more pronounced as we get further along in the maturation of social media platforms and the shifting algorithms. So, you know, I've never been one to look at likes, and I'm not one to advocate for that. I want to know, how does it affect my business? And I think that's probably one of the biggest shifts, is that discipline that you're trying to employ in the sports world that I kind of got into in the Merrell. It's like, now you really have to be laser focused with that, because now there's much more directly at stake in that regard.
Yeah. One thing I love that Instagram's doing, and I've already been a victim of spending a bunch of money on the platform, is Instagram shopping, which is definitely in your world now. This obviously got rolled out to, I think, the top 20 or 25 brands. I talked to Dave Sethi on a previous podcast about this and kind of was geeking out about it. But yeah, I bought a pair of Nikes, I think, a couple days ago. Could just scroll on Instagram and easy 2-click shop now. And as a consumer, it's a little scary because I think more money will be out of my pocket. But as a marketer and somebody in your shoes, I'm sure you're looking at that in a big way and seeing how much of the Instagram platform itself can drive revenue for you guys.
Yeah, it's been a very powerful platform. I like what your conversation with Sev from Instagram was about. Hey, the organic reach is still pretty powerful on our Instagram. So we know that works. We also know that it works from a paid perspective as well. And we have really gone into that level of, okay, how do we position our products within our feed, whether for the organic side or even with a paid side, and being really strategic about how we approach that. And yeah, definitely. I think that's, we've asked for that ability to turn that on as being one of those other brands. We're obviously not the same as, these top 20 brands, but we said, hey, we're interested and we want to go all in this area. So how do we play in the space, and how do you, can you get us, further in line than where we are right now. So, and they've been receptive to that. So I think we're kind of seeing where that goes. But we're already seeing the impact even of tagging products and then posts, and seeing the power of that. And we can get.
That just takes you off site, right? Directly to your e-commerce platform.
It can do that, or it can go within their platform where they kind of see different products and kind of sort them up. And they're always tweaking that as well. So we're watching how they're tweaking that specifically. But we found, it was actually one of the discussions we had here when I came on board was, do we put products in our feed, knowing that we're advertising, and a person, scrolling through their feed doesn't necessarily know when they see a post, they like, is this an advertisement or is this just organic? And so how do we position product in the feed? And we had a long discussion about it. And it is actually something we said, hey, let's try it. Well, let's try it with elevated product photography, meaning that it's going to look, we're going to position it in the right way. Whereas when we are marketing, maybe it's on a white background, or it's a little less, less textured. And then kind of knowing there's a difference there and how we want to utilize that. And the copy is going to be a little different, and it's going to be more like introducing you to the product, but not really talking about product benefits. Whereas lower in the process, and that we're really trying to convert the sale, that's about really telling about the product attributes and what it's used for. So it's different in that regard. But we found that the organic reach on those posts is phenomenal. In fact, 11 of our top 15 posts of all time now are product shots.
That's awesome.
So
yeah, I mean, doesn't it go back to why do people follow Merrell on Instagram? And you would assume you obviously have that outdoor community, but you have people that are actually interested in new products and new releases, and they want to kind of be first to know about some of those things. So I guess let me ask you that on the top, like, who is the community? What is the demographic that you're marketing towards, and how do you tweak your strategy based on that? Yeah,
great question. So I mean, can I break that down to several parts? So start off with kind of who our current audience is. We know we tend to be older. One of our challenges, I'll take a step back and say it this way, is as a brand, we do brands health tracker studies, every 6 months to kind of to understand how we're doing this area. We suffer from low awareness, but both among the general population and even within the outdoor industry. So there's a lot of opportunity to grow there. And I'll use this anecdotal. So a year ago when I was announcing I was coming to Merrell, I heard one of two responses. Oh, I know Merrell. I have a pair. I love them. Or who's Merrell?
Yep.
So the people who...
You either know it or you don't. There's no in between.
and when you do know us, we have a high affinity score. So we know that people who really like us, know us really like us. So now our challenge from a marketing perspective and a branding perspective is, how do we get in front of more people, introduce them to what the Merrell brand is about, and get them in part of that, both within the general population and within the outdoor industry. So the outdoor industry tends to be a little more older, and we're going to talk to that core audience. But we're also talking to, and how we really break our segmentation down in our paid strategy is, how do we talk to those aspirational audiences? And that skews younger, and how do we introduce them to the brand and introduce them to products that are really, we're making products for different audiences, and we want to get that product in front of them. So that's kind of really been a focus of our strategy, and how we segment that and how we really break that down. So When we do post on Instagram, we are thinking about those different audiences. What's going to resonate with them, and how do we position that? And then what other platforms? So, what do we post on Snapchat from a paid perspective?
Yeah.
What do we post on Reddit and in other platforms? And how do we tell our stories?
Because social in general, I truly believe that people don't like to be overly sold to. I use the analogy, nobody likes when someone knocks on their door, the solicitor, or calls you in the middle of the day. Hey, James, how you doing? Have you ever heard about this product? Like, you're annoying me. But I do think when it comes to product and people that are fans of a product and that affinity, it's a little bit different. You kind of can change your marketing approach because you have these ambassadors, you have these people that really love your product and they want to hear about that new thing. So I think it's kind of unlike other marketing where you kind of want to do upper funnel and you kind of want to make sure you're building a community. But if the followers are already there on the product, it seems like you can go a little more product heavy and be okay.
Yeah, our strategy is a little bit mix of both. So we want the aspirational audience really is that top of funnel. We're introducing them we're doing that through stories. We work with some phenomenal filmmakers and producers who are just telling some very full, meaningful stories that just demonstrate people living the outdoor life. And one comes to mind specifically is a guy named Will Robinson, not from the movie, but he goes by the moniker Acuna Hikes, and he was a veteran that was suffering from PTSD, and he decided that I'm gonna go for some hikes, and then he kind of started feeling like, hey, this feels I'm starting to feel like myself again here, so he decided to do the Pacific Coast Trail and through hike that, and then last year he did the Appalachian Trail. And we highlighted
There's something
story.
very therapeutic about getting out in nature, whatever that is. It's a legitimate energy. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's just found this has been his healing, is going on these hikes. We documented his story, and it just resonated, and it just kind of elevated. And that's a great way to talk to people and say, hey, this is who we're about as Merrell. And obviously, we know a lot of research about you're in the industry, about what a brand stand for, what are their causes they support, and what is their purpose for being. And I think those things that we're trying to really resonate with that storytelling, which does resonate the upper funnel. But then we can start. Yeah, you're right. We can start talking to our core consumers a little differently once we get into the mid funnel and how we position products and how we tell stories from that perspective. And it's very nuanced. And I think that's been one of the big unlocks for us as a brand, as we're growing here. And even growing our e-commerce and becoming a direct-to-consumer brand is how do we take that content that's created and parse that up so we're talking different audiences in different parts of their journey.
I use Nike as an example from a marketing standpoint because they often, especially with their amazing commercials, they don't show their product. I mean, it's just it's storytelling, like you said. So what you mentioned about the story about the man with PTSD and how hiking kind of was able to unlock something for him. You don't have to show the Merrell product 4,000 times in that video to make sure you're kind of telling the story of the brand and getting that brand awareness, like you said. I'll get into more general questions, but to get a little more granular real quick, when you deal with low awareness, both maybe in the industry and like overall, like you mentioned, from a paid media perspective, are you targeting audiences that may like a Patagonia or a North Face or other like maybe higher awareness products to try to like say, hey, we're here too and we're an option? Like how do you guys kind of approach that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think within the outdoor industry, you're trying to target people who really have that high affinity for they know the benefits already. They're already doing that. They're outdoors. So that's a little different targeting them versus people in general population. In general population, you're also talking to them much more about sometimes product attributes, or sometimes styling is gonna make a big influence on them. I mean, you talk about buying something from Nike. That's one of the big reasons why people, see something. Hey, I like the style of that, and
100%.
And they'll buy off of that too. So it's a lot of different ways to answer that question. And I don't want to get in our secret sauce, but but I mean that's one of those elements that if you know who you're talking to, you know where they're at in kind of the process, you can be a little more strategic with it.
Yeah, 100%. All right, so I want to kind of talk top line marketing because, like you said, working in sports and now at the brand level, I think you can add a lot of knowledge to the audience. I like asking this question a lot from a core belief standpoint. How do you approach marketing?
Oh, if you're asking me on the Merrell brand, you're asking about my personal side as well.
I think overall, yeah.
But I think they're very aligned. I mean, I think if you draw it up the way we're drawing it up at Merrell, I like the way the approach it is. We're going to tell meaningful stories. It's going to elevate the brand. And like you said, we're not going to be overly. You look at our stories that are on our YouTube channel, and you're not going to see a lot of product in them. Those meaningful stories, but it's really about celebrating the people who are out there and showcasing their diversity and in what they're bringing to the trail and how they're inspiring other people. And you see that a lot of brands doing that. I think about the Budweiser example with Dwayne Wade. I mean, that was just a powerful video because it's inspiring people. It's not he's not drinking a beer obviously in that spot. And I think that's kind of what we're kind of approaching. We're taking a little bit too, is that, hey, we're going to be about, this is that aspirational, like, hey, it's inspiring to be outdoors. And who doesn't like to be, whether it's on the beach or, San Diego, or, you're in the Rocky Mountains, or, you're hiking in the White Mountains in New Hampshire. How are you talking, how are you positioning that story? And then we kind of go from there and say, okay, how do we then introduce product, and how do we talk about product, and what's the way we want to do that
in a seamless way that's like tasteful? Yeah,
exactly. And I use the word authenticity, and I think that's overused a lot of times in our marketing world. But we really try to showcase things, and it comes down to even the pictures we select. We always look at, is that staged? Does that look staged? Does that feel right for us? Are they showing activity? If visitors are kind of just sitting there, looking around, and that's a big difference for us. So, so I think that's how we're approaching it. And then we kind of think, okay, when you get that product introduced in there, then when and where do we push that product, and how do we do that? And it's kind of like marrying that together with our e-commerce team, is how they're positioning that as well.
Yeah.
So that we're very consistent as a brand, and hopefully, as we grow this globally, we are a global brand, and we have a lot of different partners around the world that we work with, and I think that's been the message that we've been really talking to them about too, is that, hey, we're not trying to create content from a U.S. perspective. We're really trying to create content that resonates for anybody across the globe. Yeah. And we've even gone to Peru and the Faroe Islands to do some of our shoots. The Faroe Islands is in the northern Atlantic, and just to demonstrate that, hey, this looks different for different people on the surface, but really it's not. So, yeah.
This is pretty interesting because you started at Merrell recently and was able to kind of develop your plan from scratch. But if you are starting from scratch, a new company, a new brand, a new product, from a marketing standpoint, what are some of the first things you look at or start whiteboarding out when you are faced with that type of situation?
Yeah, I think customer insights. What do people really want? And I think if we're going to really be consumer led as a brand or as a marketer, we really have to dive into what are they looking for? What's the reason for being interested in this product, and then how do we wrap our heads around that and tell that story? One of the things we do here at Merrell too is that we let the story find its own path, meaning that we don't try to manufacture the story. Like you use example of Will Robinson, we didn't go out looking for him.
Yeah.
And it was actually somebody else that's already ambassador said, hey, you guys should look at this guy because he's pretty cool. She never met him in person. In fact, they actually met for the first time back in March here in our offices.
But that speaks to the fact that you guys took it serious to build a community for that stuff to happen organically. If all you're doing is selling, there's no community. There's no, hey, by the way, you should check this guy out.
Exactly.
It seems like you guys did a good job building. Yeah.
Yep.
From a customer insight standpoint, so let me ask you this. We know what Merrell is about. For the Kansas City Chiefs when you were there, what's the reason they followed you, what they want to see? What was that customer insight like on social?
Oh, I mean, I think you have to start with tailgating and barbecue. The fans there in Kansas City are amazing. They really just have a deep affinity for that team and the organization. And, even being there when the Royals won the World Series, you just see that they just love their sports teams. And it's deeply ingrained. And I think they have like this, a lot of ways, an underdog mentality. They accept the terms flyover country or cowtown, or and they say, hey, let's take that. we are in the middle. We use this in a video that was really eloquently crafted to say, hey, that middle of nowhere, no, we're in the middle of everything, and that's kind of
Yeah.
that embodiment of who people are in the Kansas City market. It's like, hey, yeah, we're a little different, but we're true to our core, and the Chiefs and the Royals and even the Kansas Jayhawks, they embody that, and that's really who they are, and they love their sports teams. They're going to support them. It is obviously a small market compared to a lot of other markets, but
I like that. It's like focusing on making sure the team is embodying what the city is all about. It's kind of where you start, because then you can speak so well to that core base.
Yeah, I think that's where I think it's a great point, because I think you see some teams miss the mark in that regard. It's like who are we? Who's our audience? And then sometimes you kind of miss out on that. And that was being with the Tampa Bay Lightning too. That was another area that working with the leadership team there, from Todd Lewicki to the on down. I mean, that's what you were always trying to grasp. Like, who are we? And what's unique about this area?
Sometimes you have to ask yourself that question every quarter. I mean, it's just kind of based on your brand, right? I mean, Patrick Mahomes, who are we, changes a little bit when he's an MVP candidate, because now it's like, we're maybe a Super Bowl winning team coming up. Like, that's who we are, type deal.
Absolutely, yeah.
I love Patrick Mahomes, by the way. All right, so from an influencer marketing standpoint, we talked about likes, and I think a big reason why Instagram may be going this way, they're kind of pushing the PR message, but also from a business standpoint, I think they much rather have these brands spend directly with Facebook and Instagram on the back end of advertising than give money directly to influencers. So there's got to be something to that too. But what have you seen in your career thus far from an influencer standpoint? What works and what doesn't, and what your recommendation would be to people out there? Because I think it's an important marketing strategy to pull that lever for any brand, but you have to make sure you do it with precision.
Yeah, I think it might kind of start with influencer marketing. Really kind of took shape with kind of a unique approach, and that was with Tampa Bay. One of the things that we talked about, being a hockey team in a non-traditional hockey market, and your biggest competitor is really the beach. There's so many things to do outside, and you start hockey season in October. It's like that's the prime. That's when the best weather is in that area. Yeah. How do you get people excited about hockey? And one of the things that we tackled and said, how do we do this? Because we had just a phenomenal in-game experience. Like, going to the game is just, you don't have to be a sports fan. You have fun.
Hockey too, just what a great environment to watch live hockey.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And at the time we were kind of rebuilding the brand and going through that process of like, how do we really build this thing back up and build it the right way? And we decided, hey, let's invite people to the game who have a social media following, but we want people who are authentic, but we just want them to share their experience of the game and help them speak to other audiences. And it started off with just like local TV personalities and, some other people. Like, we had some Olympians down there that, lived the year round, and said, hey, why don't you guys come out? And then all of a sudden we start getting calls saying, hey, I'm an agent for this actor and this TV show. Hey, they heard about this program. Can they be this? And we're like, sure. And then you started having, Major League Baseball players down there for spring training.
Awesome.
Said, hey, we want to come out. I want to be the social captain. How do I do that? And so it really started this groundswell of activity, and really helped us reach out to new people and say, by the way, this is a peek inside of what's going on. This is a cool place to be. And obviously the Lightning now are on a,
providing value. I think what's important about that, providing value as well, rather than, hey, can you do something for us? Hey, we happen to have this program, or we have this campaign. We would love for you to be a part of it. So you're giving something rather than always asking.
Exactly. Yeah. I think they're excited to do it. You're excited to have them there, and you give them a really good experience. And then basically, as that kind of grows, and I think I've used that kind of mentality as I've gone forward now. I don't need to have people with a big following. Now, when you get to Kansas City, it's a little different because you have guys like Paul Rudd and David Koechner and Jason Sudeikis and even Kevin Richardson from Backstreet Boys, and they're all like, hey, we're Kansas State Chiefs fans. We're
and
in.
Also, I think what NFL teams don't think enough about is like your roster. that's your influence too. Like that's a huge part of your a huge part of your distribution and reach are your actual players on the field that have their own following and own distribution too.
Yeah, that's a great point because I was talking to a colleague in the NFL before I had left, and he's like, he goes, we are actually envious of you because you guys have personalities like Travis Kelce and Chris Jones, and they are just so much fun. They're such larger than life personalities. We wish we had that. And absolutely, I think that is a big way that we were able to utilize that. Chris Jones, just a great guy. There was one time we asked him, say, "Hey, Chris, would you be willing to put a video out on your platform to say, hey, we want to get the crowd riled up for this game. Tell them to arrive early. This is a big game for us. It's big, but can you help us?" He goes, "Can you guys shoot it?" And we're like, but
of course.
Yeah, where you're at. He goes, "Well, I left the facility about 10 minutes ago, but I'll turn around and come back in so you guys can shoot it."
That's awesome.
And that's kind of things that he was willing to do and put his personality out there. And when you do have
all that little stuff matters, man.
Oh, absolutely. And that stuff is the stuff that not only what he gets, it's a way for him to connect with his fans, but it's also helped to support what he's about anyway. Like, hey, let's bump this crowd up.
I love it. All right, so I got some rapid fire questions for you here towards the end of the program.
Sure.
What's a common mistake that you see other marketers making on social or digital?
Making it too complex. You make a really complex, either obviously in your guys' wheelhouse, but you make a graphic that sometimes just communicates too much.
Has 4 different call to actions. Yeah.
Yeah, or a bunch of call like, hey, do this and this, or just making it simple and making something that can stand on its own. At sometimes we talk about even here at Merrell, like sometimes you don't have to. This will sell itself. You put that out there, people are going to be excited about it.
Yeah.
And sometimes just simplifying is probably one of the best ways to go, and not overly complicating things.
Love it. What brands come to mind that are doing it right on social right now that you either follow or just are inspired by the way that they market?
Oh man, I think there's a lot of D2C first brands out there. And you go down the line of like Casper to like even in our industry, the Allbirds and Rothy's and Casper. There's some of their content is just hilarious. And I mean, I look at that and saying, okay, well, the videos they do where they take customer comments and they have their employees read them and they kind of react to them is so entertaining. It feels like, if you look at content from the perspective, does it inform? Does it educate? Does it entertain? That does all three. And it does it so well, and it just sort of does it in such a fun way that's like, hey, this is great. But how they really approached going into customer acquisition to build their audiences, it's been a really good learning for us, and really good for any marketer. Is how these D2C brands are really operating, how they did that, how they use the social platforms to really build their audience, and now how they're even shifting. I'm reading reports now that they're shifting into connected TV as a programmatic ad buy. So it's kind of like the advertising agency or world is coming kind of full circle. You're kind of straight away from TV, now you're coming back to TV, but it's got to be different than what you saw in the past. And in terms of TV marketing, you really have to be engaging really quickly and you can be really targeted with it.
Are you guys super random, but are you guys involved in podcast advertising at all?
Yeah, we actually work with some podcasts, and
because that's another market I think people forget about.
Oh, absolutely.
I've seen some amazing just ROI on that.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's such a deep immersion with the brand too if you do it the right way. I think about one that was, I think they discontinued it. It was about 1.5 years ago. It was Gatorade, and it was stories of all their athletes like Serena and Peyton Manning and Kyle Schwarber. They told their stories, but they didn't talk about Gatorade all through the product. Exactly. But Gatorade was sponsoring it. It was such a great. I think that's one of the best examples of advertising you can get into is positioning your product in that way.
And you see like a Joe Rogan or a Tim Ferriss, their audience respects them so much and looks at them as such an influence in their daily lives that them coming out and saying, I trust this product. I think it goes a long way because there's something about, this is kind of weird, but there's something about somebody talking in your head. If you have headphones on and you're listening to someone speak like you and I are now, it definitely is a more intimate experience. I feel like that you end up getting a connection more so than maybe just following somebody on social or whatever. So
this feels very, very meta right now.
I'm talking about podcasts as we're on a podcast.
Yes.
Sorry. All right. So, what is the one social or marketing tool that you could not live without?
Let's see there. You talk about analytics platform? Or are you talking like just the platform itself?
Anything, whether it's more of a platform that can help you with your day-to-day workflow, or it's analytical, or it's measuring.
Yeah, we use the Del Mondo product, which is now gone over to Conviva, and that's just to helps us really get insights, especially in the realm of when I say understanding how our video content is performing across all channels. To see that aggregated in one place helps. It saves a lot of time. I was always a big fan. Other guests have said this too, but Crowd Tango, and I had that within the NFL. That was pretty powerful. Now we don't have access to it anymore. They don't give out just any brands either. So I've been knocking on the door for a good 9 months now.
If you ever need me to look someone up for you, just shoot me an email. I got your back. I'll send you some screenshots.
Yeah.
From a business perspective, with Merrell specifically, what social platforms seem to be working the best right now in terms of Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, YouTube? Can you kind of rank in order of what you're really seeing good results on?
Yeah, I think number one right now is Instagram. We're really heavily in that. We're probably putting more intention and thought into what that looks like, because as we argue, I mean, you said it yourself, and you're arguing the organic reach is a lot of times three to four times higher than what it is on Facebook right now. But Facebook has that. It's still going to rank up there because it still has that potential to really get that virality. I just don't know that the virality is as much going to be. Can you still really achieve that virality without paid behind it as well?
Of course. Yeah.
So, and we've had an example on one video when I first got here, and it just took off and it just stunned everybody, and it had a high level of virality. And then we put some paid behind it to keep it going, and then it kept going. But there's another video we just did called "The Running Pastor." It's talked about the Faroe Islands, about a pastor who's a big runner, and that's kind of how he deals with all the pressures of his job, and he's running in these crazy environments where the vertical inclines are incredible. We put that video out, and it did pretty well. We got a little going. Okay, let's put the boost behind it, and then it got going, and then also just took off after that.
Yeah.
So I think you're going to still see that from that perspective, and I think that's still critical. But I think with our video content storytelling and how we approach it, YouTube is up there as well, and knowing that
more original content or more like pre-roll on
original
on
content.
paid?
Original content.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And then I always ask this, but in our industry, FOMO is a major thing since everything moves so quickly. What's the one thing that you recommend all social media marketers like you and I read, follow, just stay involved with to make sure you keep your thumb on the pulse?
Oh, I think you can answer that.
Other than at James Royer on Twitter,
Well, yeah, I was thinking there a little bit too ago that, you mentioned the podcasters like Rogan and and Ferris, and you didn't mention Brickley, so I don't know.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
So I think you have to be. I don't know if there's one source, and I think I've been asked that question a lot of times in my career. Mm-hmm. I think it's you have to be a constant learner, have that mindset. Where am I going to learn today? Because sometimes these reports can come from different places, and obviously sometimes they're branded reports. You have to take them with a grain of salt, but you have to look for what's that kernel of truth inside there. What's the insight that I can take from that? And I think that's been the mindset I've had really for years, because I think if you asked me that question 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I might say certain things, and I said, but that doesn't resonate with me as much as it did back then. Mm-hmm. But now it's getting deeper and deeper. How do we really go after that? So, and I don't think it's just one source. I think you really have to study the industry as a whole, study what brands are doing, study what's being reported by the brands, and understanding who's doing it well and how do you measure that. Sometimes you can't tell from the surface, but you kind of know that, hey, they're nailing it.
I think too, like what you said about Casper, just like following other brands and saying, that's interesting what they're doing. I wonder if that's working. Let me dig more into that, or let me A/B test that for our brand. And I think the more you're actually in this space, I think a lot of marketers they don't have a solid social media strategy because they don't use social media. Like, it's pretty important to be on those platforms so you can see those opportunities. Any advice from your standpoint, anybody striving to be a director of marketing at a brand like yourself? You obviously had some success in professional sports and then moving on to an awesome brand job. Any advice to kind of get to that senior level?
I think just continue to work. I mean, work at it. I mean, that's. I think every day is a chance to test and to grow yourself. And I think that's always been my kind of focus. There's some times where like, hey, the things weren't going as well. I think back to maybe use that as example as being in Kansas City. We had built up a really strong, following and engagement. We were the number one team in engagement among all NFL teams and with the Chiefs. But Instagram wasn't doing as well. And I was just throwing things at the wall, saying, how do we do this? How do we crack this one? Yeah. And then we started finding this cadence and like, oh my gosh, this is working. This is working. This is working. And we grew that to, I think we were number 7 overall. And it was just a big difference there. But those learnings I'm still applying today.
Yeah.
And I think it's really about, one is understanding how do you look at this from an objective standpoint? What are those KPIs you're trying to get to? But how do you continue to test and tweak that, and take some opportunities to learn different areas inside the business? I mean, I think there's a post in the social media world, at least in the sports social media world, it said, hey, social media is not this. Running a social media account is not this, this, and this, and this, but it's all these things. And I think that's what you have to understand from a social media perspective and a digital perspective is that you can't just be an e-commerce expert. You can't just be a social media expert. You can't just be a content. You're trying to bring all these things together and say, how does this work? And how do you leverage these opportunities to build that up? So how do you continue to be an expert in that area? That's great, but build the other areas. And I had we had a really good, really smart coach in Tampa Bay. And one of his big things was, he talked about how he coached players. And he's like, I want to build to people's strengths. He would say, I want people to know this is what they're really good at, because I want them to be really good at that. I want them to, and then when you do that, and he has a master's degree in sports psychology, and he was saying when you do that, what happens is they automatically want to get better at that area, then they want to get better at other areas as well. Yeah. And I thought it was a great leadership and coaching mentality. It's like, how do you now, like when you start really knowing what you're good at and honing that area and build up around that, that's where I think you really grow.
All right, I'm excited for this next question. After leaving the Kansas City Chiefs, NFL 365, obviously, you get your Sundays back potentially here. What's the one thing that you don't miss about professional sports marketing?
I just got asked by that colleague maybe 2 weeks ago. He's like, so are you gonna miss training camp? And I'm like, no.
Yeah, exactly.
No.
Training camp.
Yeah, Sundays. I mean, you miss Sundays. Yeah, I think you're always going to miss Sundays and game days, and just the excitement of being in the stadium. And even in Kansas City, I think one of my favorite activities was always walking from our offices to the stadium, which actually you had to walk to the parking lots of the stadium. It's about a half mile somewhere in there. And I just love seeing people outdoors, and even in the worst of weathers in Kansas City, people are still out there throwing footballs around and campfires and smoking their briskets and things like that. It's just incredible environment. Yeah. You're always going to miss that, but I think the part you don't miss the most is some of that, and I think the off season too. Sometimes it's a
grind, man, an absolute grind.
Yeah,
I mean, anybody in this space you have to respect and tip your hat to.
Yeah, I think I was looking at a hockey team recently, and I'm like, hey, I like they're pushing content out. I'm like, this is the hardest time of year to talk about hockey because all your players, if they're from Canada, have gone off somewhere in the woods. You have no access to them. Somewhere up in Saskatchewan or wherever else they're at, and all your European players are back home, and you have nobody around. You have nothing you can do to create original content, and so you have to be really creative. And sometimes that tends to be a grind. And I think even in the NFL, when you have those down periods, like how do you talk about the team when you have those periods? Now the NFL is obviously spaced out a little more with draft and free agency and then mini camps.
NFL team, some sports team like took a vacation for either a day or a week. I thought they didn't tweet for, I forget who it was.
I know the Eagles did that after they won the Super Bowl.
The Eagles, they went dark, But it's kind of funny. Like I feel like there's some times where, hey, we don't have a ton of content to post over the next 48 hours. We'll see in a few. It's funny.
Yep.
All right. Well, then finally, if you could recommend anyone in your network you think would provide value or drop some good knowledge for my listeners on the podcast, who would that person be? Anybody come to mind in your network?
Yeah, actually, I think there's 2 people that I think would be really, really interesting to talk to. One is he's pretty quiet. He's kind of one of those quiet leaders in the NFL. And that's Kenton Olsen from the Seahawks.
Yeah,
he is one of those. He's done this for a long time. He continues to be at the top of his game, and just a really good guy. But I think he has one of those voices in the NFL that just resonates. That when you hear him talk, he's really thought through things and how he approaches it. And
I
obviously,
think he even had some good things to say about STN when you asked about us to him or something. I think I remember you saying something. So
yeah, absolutely.
He's awesome.
Yeah, and I think even look in the NFL circles. I'll give you a couple bonus ones here too. But you know them as well as I do. But Sana Merchant and Alyssa Lippman on the NFL team.
Yeah.
They were just great resources to work with on a regular basis, and they got it. They understood things from league perspective and from team perspective, and you always see that a lot.
Yeah.
And I think that was how they were so good at really working with the teams and really navigating a very kind of a interesting time in social media in the NFL when I was working with them, and even today,
Right.
Obviously. The other one, kind of a wild card here for you, guy by the name of Jason Herrera. So Jason had been at Walmart for years, working in there, and I won't even get this right, but basically using applied behavioral sciences to how it impacts the user behavior in purchase process.
Oh,
and,
I love this.
And
That's
he
awesome.
is just a really neat guy. I've had a chance to meet him a couple times.
Because every time I go to Target or a Walmart, I end up spending $190 somehow when I go in for a spatula. So.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you think about those guys are trying to get from 2.5% to 2 3/4%, and
Yeah.
but that's billions of dollars for Walmart. And how do they really utilize that? And he's come from a very interesting background, so he's really interesting to listen to.
Awesome. I'll have to hit you up for some intros on that. I appreciate it. So
Yeah, definitely.
Once again, Director of Digital Marketing at Merrell, James Royer. Thanks so much for all the knowledge you dropped, man, and I really appreciate the time.
Great to be here, and thanks again for having me. It's been an honor.
Of course. Thanks, James.
Yep.
All right, there he is, James Royer, Director of Digital Marketing at Merrell. Awesome episode. I really appreciate him joining us on the show, getting real granular with you fine folks on exactly how he approaches brand. Telling meaningful stories is what I pulled out of that, and I think they're doing it right, that it's not hitting you over the head with buy me, and telling stories. It's interesting on YouTube. Original content is working really, really well for them right now. Facebook on the paid side, and sometimes when content isn't really working organically, putting a little boost behind it he's seen has really taken off. And I thought his thought on influencer marketing was super interesting. I know I went on a tangent there with Instagram likes, but from his history in influencer marketing, how he's approached it seems to be working really well, and he's building an awesome community of followers and fans of the brand first and foremost, and that's allowing him to tell even more stories and extending that brand message. And I thought that was interesting, a guy that came out and said, listen, we have a low awareness in the community and globally, we want to expand that. So knowing that and self-admitting that challenge, how can we build our marketing strategy around that? And he's someone that you can tell, man, is constantly, my motto is, analyze, adjust, tweak, evolve. And you have to really enjoy that process in order to be successful in social media and marketing and digital in general. And he's all about that. Feel free to make a follow on Twitter. I kind of made fun of him towards the top, but he's always screenshotting terrible sales emails, which anybody out there listening can appreciate when you get a terrible sales email. So he has some fun with that. A constant series on his Twitter, but overall, it was great to catch up and talk shop with James Royer. This has been episode number 40, the Pat Tillman episode here on the Business of Social podcast. Give it up for David Ferker and Will Kelly helping. Did Dylan help a little bit? Should we shout Dylan out? I think we always have this. I mean, he's going to edit the podcast. He's going to, a huge part of this program. So shout out Dylan as well. This has been another edition of the Business of Social podcast. My name is David Brickley. This has been powered by STN Digital.